Cognitive walkthrough is another usability inspection method that does not involve users. As the name implies, the experts walk through a task with the product and note problematic usability features. Unlike heuristic evaluation, where experts were inspecting the interface or the system for the presence or absence of target design principles, in cognitive walkthrough, the experts are focused on evaluating designs for ease of learning, meaning that they are trying to evaluate whether users will be able to learn to use the interface just by exploring. In cognitive walkthrough, designers and experts work together. The designers will first present an aspect of the design along with the usage scenario to the expert, meaning that the designers will select a part of the interface that they want to be inspected and present it to the experts along with all the steps that they will have to take in order to complete a certain task. The experts are told to make assumptions about the users, the context of use, and task details, meaning that experts will be told what kind of users will interact with the system, what will be their context of use, and how this task is going to be completed. One or more experts are then going to walk through the design prototype using this information independently. As the experts are going through the interface, they try to answer each question for each step in the task scenario. The first question is, will the correct action be sufficiently evident to the user? Meaning, does the interface provide cues to the user on how to complete this particular step of the task? The second question that the expert try to answer is that, will the user notice that the correct action is available? It's one thing to include the cue on the interface, but it's another thing to make sure that the cue is actually visible to the user or not. So this question is about making sure that the cue is sufficiently visible to the user and the user will be able to notice it. The last question is, will the user be able to associate and interpret the response from the action correctly? Meaning, does the interface provide enough feedback to the user so they can understand and interpret whether their action has been correctly registered by the interface or not? So the answers to each of these questions is either yes or no. The experts either answer yes to the question or no. If they answer no, then they have to note the problem with the interface they noticed. And then they can also make suggestions to solve this particular problem. After going through the entire task scenario, the experts convene and discuss their findings with each other and prepare a report. The final report and design suggestions are then discussed and finalized with the designers. Let's look at an example of a cognitive walkthrough. Okay, so let's suppose that the designer wants me to do a cognitive walkthrough of this particular task, i.e. report a problem. Now the designer has asked me to assume that the user is an expert Windows user. Their context of use, meaning that when they're reporting a problem doing this task, they will be doing it in their home office. And the task detail is that this task is not a daily task, it's just a rare task, happens once in a while. And the designer has given me a set of steps that are needed to be performed by the user. So the user has to first click on this button, enter this, enter that, choose a category, find similar feedback, and add more details. So these are all the steps that the user has to do in order to complete this task. Now, what I'm going to do as an expert is I'm going to try and answer these 3 questions for every single step. So let's try to answer these 3 questions. So the first question is the action sufficiently evident to the user? So clicking on report a problem button. So is the action visible? Yes, I think it's visible because the button is big enough, it's in blue, and there aren't too many blue buttons, so it's sufficiently evident. Will the user notice the correct action is available? Yes, I think users will be able to see this particular button. So I will answer yes. Will the user associate and interpret the response from the action correctly? So for this one, I have to actually click on the report button, report a problem button, to see whether the feedback that is being generated can be interpreted by the user or not. So let's click on this button. And this takes me to a different screen. So I think that makes sense too. So yeah, the user is an experts Windows user. And this is typically how the Windows operating system works. Whenever you click on a button, it goes to a different screen. So yes, I think the user will be able to understand the feedback that they're getting. They will be able to understand that it has been interpreted. So if for any reason, let's suppose that I answer no to this question, then I'll have to type in a response. So for example, if the user wasn't an expert Windows user, then they might become confused because all of a sudden everything that they were looking at is disappeared. So then I'll answer that the new screen will confuse the user. It is better to show this form on the same page. Okay, and then after finishing this step, then I'll do the same thing for this particular step. I'll try to answer all these 3 questions for this step as well. And then I'll go step by step. So there are some challenges of using cognitive walkthrough. First of all, it's a long and painstaking process. Especially if a task has a lot of steps, experts have to answer 3 questions for every single step. So let's say if a task had 10 steps, then the experts will have to answer a total of 30 questions, since they have to answer 3 questions for each step. Then obviously this is going to take a long time. Secondly, after the experts have done their cognitive walkthrough and they are discussing their findings with each other, these discussions sometimes end up being too long, especially if the interface is not well designed and the experts have thought about different ways of answering the questions. Then the discussions can end up being too long, and sometimes they are even unnecessary. So the way to solve this problem is to have discussion leaders and moderators who are going to control these discussions. Another problem is that when experts present their findings or their suggestions to the designers, it is often seen that designers become very defensive. This is detrimental to the social relationships that the experts and designers are trying to form with each other, and it is also counterproductive. In fact, this issue became so problematic that now there is a rule explicitly to prevent this problem, and the rule is that nobody is allowed to defend their designs.